The thermal imaging camera felt heavy in my hands as I climbed into the attic that Tuesday morning in March. After 20 years as a certified home inspector, I could navigate these cramped spaces blindfolded, but today felt different. This wasn't just another job. This was my own house, and State Farm needed updated thermal readings for our insurance renewal. Just another routine inspection, I muttered, adjusting the camera's settings. The device hummed to life, its screen displaying the familiar blue and red heat signatures of a typical attic space. I'd been putting off this inspection for months. Denise had been nagging me about it, worried our premiums might increase if we didn't comply with the insurance company's new requirements. "Grant, you inspect everyone else's house," she'd said just last week, standing in our kitchen wearing the expensive silk blouse she claimed was a gift from a grateful consulting client. "Why can't you take 5 minutes to do ours?" The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, 43 years old, making a living finding other people's hidden problems, and I'd never thought to look for any in my own home. But then again, who suspects their own spouse of conducting industrial-level surveillance operations? I started near the HVAC unit, scanning for insulation gaps that might be driving up our energy bills. The camera showed normal patterns at first: cooler blues where insulation was adequate, warmer reds where heat was escaping. Our heating costs had been creeping up over the past year, and I figured finding a few gaps would explain the increase. But as I moved toward the far corner of the attic, something caught my attention: a cluster of bright red signatures that didn't belong. "What the hell?" I whispered, adjusting the camera's focus. The heat signatures were small, rectangular, and definitely electronic. They were positioned at regular intervals along what appeared to be a planned route through the attic space. These weren't HVAC components or electrical boxes. I knew every inch of this house's systems. I'd inherited it from my parents 5 years ago, and I'd personally overseen every repair and upgrade since then. My pulse quickened as I crawled toward the first signature. Behind a section of loose insulation, I found a small black device about the size of a deck of cards. It had a tiny green LED that pulsed every few seconds, and when I looked closer, I could see a lens no bigger than a pencil eraser. A camera. Professional grade by the look of it. Not some cheap security device you'd buy at an electronics store, but sophisticated surveillance equipment that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. My hands trembled as I followed the cables. They led to another device, then another. Each camera was positioned with military precision, connected by a network of thin black cables that ran along the attic's support beams, like some kind of technological nervous system. "This can't be right," I said aloud, my voice echoing in the confined space. But it was right. Over the next hour, I found 12 cameras positioned throughout our attic, each one pointed down through carefully drilled holes that I'd somehow never noticed. The precision of the installation was remarkable. Someone had spent considerable time and effort to make this system virtually undetectable. The cables all led to a central hub near the attic access point, a sophisticated piece of equipment that looked like a small server with multiple hard drives and networking equipment that would make most IT departments jealous. I pulled out my phone and called in sick to my afternoon appointments. Mrs. Rodriguez would have to wait another day for her pre-purchase inspection. This was going to take a while. The cables disappeared through a hole that had been drilled into the interior wall, leading down toward the basement. I followed them like a bloodhound, my inspector's training taking over even as my personal world began to crumble around me. In the basement, behind our old water heater where I rarely had reason to look, I found the main server. It was a sleek black box about the size of a small refrigerator, humming quietly with the kind of activity that indicated serious data processing. Multiple cables fed into it from above, and several LED lights indicated active data transmission. But what made my stomach drop was the small monitor attached to the side, cycling through live feeds from different cameras throughout our house. Our bedroom, where Denise claimed she needed privacy for her morning meditation routine, Our bathroom, where she spent 45 minutes every morning on what she called her self-care regimen. The living room, where we watched TV every night, where she'd curl up against me and talk about her day while strangers watched us through hidden lenses. I recognized our furniture, our belongings, but seeing them through these hidden cameras made everything feel violated and foreign. On the monitor, I could see our empty bedroom from an angle that captured the entire bed and most of the room. The camera was positioned to get maximum coverage of our most intimate space. My hands shook as I found the server's access panel. Inside was a collection of hard drives and what appeared to be a high-speed internet connection that I definitely never authorized. A small label on one of the drives read, "Backup 18 months." 18 months. Someone had been watching us for 18 months. But who? And why? I spent the next 3 hours documenting everything with my phone, taking photos from every angle and making detailed notes about the equipment specifications. My professional training kicked in. Model numbers, serial numbers, cable routing, power consumption estimates. The methodical approach helped keep me focused while my personal life imploded around me. Then I found the laptop. It was hidden behind the server, connected by an Ethernet cable and password protected. But the screensaver was cycling through what appeared to be website screenshots, subscriber counts, payment summaries, and comment threads that made my blood run cold. The words I could make out made my stomach churn. Love watching the wife in the morning routine. Worth every penny. Best content for the money feels so authentic. The husband is so clueless. Makes it even better. This wasn't just surveillance. Someone was broadcasting our private lives to paying customers, and those customers knew they were watching real people in real situations without consent. I took pictures of everything and forced myself to leave the basement exactly as I'd found it. Upstairs, I walked through our house with new eyes, looking for the tiny holes that would indicate camera positions. Now that I knew what to look for, I found them easily. Above our bed, disguised as a small screw hole in the ceiling molding. In the bathroom, hidden behind the ventilation grate where the angle would capture both the shower and the vanity area. In the living room, positioned to capture our couch and TV area where we spent most of our evenings. Even in the kitchen, aimed at our breakfast table where we had our most intimate conversations over morning coffee. 12 cameras total, just as I'd found in the attic. Someone had turned our entire house into a broadcast studio. I sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where someone had been watching us eat breakfast every morning for the past year and a half, and tried to think rationally about what to do next. The equipment was professional grade, expensive, and expertly installed. This wasn't some amateur operation run by a bored neighbor or a random pervert. Someone with significant technical knowledge and financial resources had invaded our home. But who had access? Who could have installed this system without me noticing? The house had been in my family for 3 generations. I'd inherited it from my parents 5 years ago after Dad's heart attack, and Denise and I had been living here ever since. We'd had some renovation work done in that time, new flooring in the bedroom, updated bathroom fixtures, some electrical work to support Denise's expanding home office needs. The electrical work. The memory hit me like a physical blow. Denise had arranged for that work about 2 years ago. She'd said she'd found a great contractor through her financial advisor, Ryan Hutchinson. A guy who could do the electrical updates we needed at a discount rate because he was trying to build his client base. Ryan Hutchinson, who'd been helping Denise with her business consulting for the past 2 years. Ryan Hutchinson, who somehow always seemed to know a little too much about our personal life when we ran into him at local restaurants or the grocery store. Ryan Hutchinson, who'd taken an unusual interest in our home's layout during his initial consultation, asking detailed questions about room configurations and wall construction that seemed excessive for simple electrical work. I pulled out my phone and called my attorney, Mike Ware. We'd been friends since college, and he'd handled the legal work when I inherited the house. Mike, it's Grant Novak. I need to see you today. It's urgent. Grant? What's going on? You sound terrible. I found something in my house. Something that could be criminal. Can you meet me somewhere private? There was a pause. Mike knew me well enough to understand that I didn't panic easily. How about my office in an hour? And Grant, don't discuss this over the phone. An hour later, I sat in Mike's conference room with my phone full of photos and a story that sounded insane even to me. Let me get this straight, Mike said, leaning back in his chair after I'd shown him everything. You found a professional surveillance system in your own home that's been broadcasting to paying subscribers for 18 months? That's exactly what I found. And you suspect your wife's financial advisor installed it? I suspect my wife had it installed. The words felt like acid coming out of my mouth. The electrical work happened right around the time the metadata shows the recording started. Denise arranged it all. She's the only one who could have coordinated this level of access. Mike was quiet for a long moment, studying the photos on my phone. Grant, do you understand what you're telling me? If this is true, we're talking about multiple felonies. Interstate commerce, wire fraud, violation of privacy laws, possibly even RICO violations if this is part of a larger operation. I know exactly what I'm telling you. Have you confronted Denise? No. I wanted to talk to you first. Good. Don't say anything to her yet. If she's involved, confronting her now could lead to destroyed evidence. Mike pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. Tell me about the financial side. How much money are we talking about? I showed him the screenshots I'd captured from the laptop. Based on what I could see, over 3,000 subscribers at $30 per month. That's over 90,000 per month for 18 months. Mike whistled low. That's over $1.5 million. And Denise has been telling me her consulting business with Ryan is finally taking off. She's been traveling more, spending more money, talking about expanding into new markets. I thought about all the expensive purchases she'd made recently. The designer clothes, the jewelry, the spa weekends she claimed were networking events. She said Ryan was helping her develop a specialized marketing approach that was generating premium rates from clients. What kind of consulting? Marketing and business development. At least that's what she tells me. She says Ryan's been helping her build a client base willing to pay top dollar for authentic marketing content. The phrase, authentic marketing content, took on a horrible new meaning as I said it. Mike set down his pen. Grant, I need you to listen to me carefully. If what you're telling me is true, your wife has committed multiple federal crimes, but more importantly, you could be in danger if she realizes you know. Danger? We're talking about over $1 million here. People have killed for far less. And if she's willing to violate your privacy this completely, there's no telling what else she might be capable of if she feels cornered. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd been thinking about betrayal and humiliation, but I hadn't considered the possibility that Denise might actually be dangerous. What do I do? First, we preserve evidence. I'm going to connect you with a digital forensics expert who can help you document everything without alerting anyone. Second, we're going to quietly investigate the financial trail. And third, you're going to act completely normal until we have enough evidence to move forward safely. How long will that take? Could be days, could be weeks. The important thing is that we do this right. If we move too fast, evidence gets destroyed. If we move too slow, more evidence gets created that could be used against you in a divorce proceeding. The mention of divorce made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. I wasn't just dealing with a privacy violation. I was looking at the complete destruction of my marriage and possibly my financial future. Acting normal turned out to be the hardest part. That evening, Denise came home from what she called a client meeting with Ryan. She was in a particularly good mood, chatting about her day and asking about my work with a kind of detailed interest that would have seemed loving just hours earlier. Now every question felt like intelligence gathering. "How was the insurance inspection?" she asked as we ate dinner at the kitchen table. The same table I now knew was being broadcast live to thousands of strangers around the world. "Fine. Just routine thermal imaging for State Farm." I managed to keep my voice steady. Found a few minor insulation issues in the attic. Nothing expensive, I hope. "We're doing so well financially right now. It would be a shame to have unexpected repair costs." "No, just some gaps near the HVAC unit. Maybe a few $100s to fix." She nodded and changed the subject to her own day. She talked about meeting with potential clients, developing marketing strategies, and building her business relationship with Ryan. As she spoke, I found myself cataloging every lie. There were no clients. There was no legitimate marketing business. The only thing she'd been marketing was our private life to an audience of paying perverts. "Ryan thinks we should expand into the Portland market," she said, taking a sip of the expensive wine she'd started buying regularly over the past year. "There's a conference there next month that could be really valuable for networking." Another lie. Another business trip that was probably a romantic getaway funded by money earned from violating my privacy. "That sounds expensive," I said carefully. "It's an investment in our future, Grant." "Ryan says you have to spend money to make money, especially in the consulting business. The conference fees and travel costs will pay for themselves within 6 months if we land the right clients." Our future. The phrase made me physically ill. "How much are we talking about?" "Maybe 5,000 for both of us to attend." "But Grant, the potential return is enormous. Ryan has connections in Portland who are looking for exactly the kind of authentic marketing content we provide." $5,000 of my money to fund her affair, while she sat there lying to my face under cameras she'd installed to broadcast our most intimate moments. After dinner, I excused myself to the garage, claiming I needed to organize some tools for tomorrow's inspections. Instead, I called the digital forensics expert Mike had recommended. "Mr. Novak, this is Sarah Martinez. Mike Ware asked me to call you. Thank you for reaching out so quickly. He gave me a brief overview of your situation. I need to ask, is this an active surveillance system?" "Yes, it's currently recording and streaming. I watch the live feeds cycling through different cameras." "Then we need to move fast. Every day we wait, more evidence could be created or destroyed. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? I'll need to examine the system in person. My wife will be at work. She usually leaves around 8 and doesn't come home until after 5. "Perfect. I'll bring everything we need to create a complete forensic copy of the servers and hard drives. But Mr. Novak, this has to be done in complete secrecy. If anyone involved realizes we're investigating, they could wipe everything remotely." "What should I tell my wife if she asks about my schedule?" "Normal day. Normal appointments. The key is maintaining routine until we're ready to move." That night, I lay awake next to Denise while she slept peacefully, probably dreaming about her next expensive trip with Ryan. Every few minutes, I'd remember that cameras were recording us, that strangers were potentially watching us sleep, and I'd have to fight the urge to get up and rip the entire system apart with my bare hands. The next morning, after Denise left for her marketing job at the consulting firm that didn't exist, Sarah arrived with a van full of equipment. She was a small woman in her 40s with prematurely gray hair and the focused intensity of someone who'd spent years tracking down digital evidence for federal prosecutors. "Show me what you found," she said simply. I led her through the house, pointing out each camera location, then down to the basement server. She whistled when she saw the setup. "This is sophisticated equipment. Whoever installed this knew exactly what they were doing." She pulled on latex gloves and began examining the server. "This isn't some off-the-shelf security system. It's a custom configuration designed specifically for streaming content to paying subscribers. How can you tell? The camera angles, the storage configuration, the bandwidth allocation. Everything is optimized for capturing and broadcasting bedroom activities. She pointed to specific components. See this? It's a high-end encoding system that maintains video quality while reducing file sizes for internet streaming. And this networking equipment? It's designed to handle simultaneous uploads to multiple platforms. Multiple platforms? Your wife wasn't just running one streaming site. This system is configured to broadcast to several different services simultaneously, maximizing subscriber reach and revenue. The scope of the operation kept getting worse. How long will it take to copy everything? Several hours, but I can work while you're at your regular appointments. We need to maintain normal routines so no one suspects anything. She was right. I forced myself to go to work, inspecting other people's homes while trying not to think about what Sarah was discovering in mine. Every thermal scan reminded me of finding those camera signatures. Every client conversation felt surreal. I was helping other people identify problems in their houses while my own house had been turned into an illegal broadcasting studio. My first appointment was a pre-purchase inspection for a young couple buying their first home. They were excited, nervous, asking detailed questions about every minor issue I found. "Is this electrical work up to code?" the husband asked, pointing to some outlet installations in the basement. "It looks professional," I said, thinking about the professional electrical work that had been done in my own home. "But I'd recommend having a licensed electrician verify it before closing." "How can we tell if an electrician is legitimate?" "Check their license with the state board. Get references. Make sure they're bonded and insured." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was giving advice about verifying contractors while my own wife had apparently hired criminals to wire our house for surveillance. The young couple thanked me and said they'd follow my recommendations. As I watched them discuss their future in the house they were buying, I couldn't help but think about how excited Denise and I had been when we'd first moved into my family's house 5 years ago. My afternoon appointment was a routine annual inspection for an elderly client, Mrs. Patterson, who'd been using my services for over a decade. "Grant, you look tired," she said, offering me coffee while I examined her HVAC system. "Everything all right at home?" "Just working through some issues, Mrs. Patterson. Nothing that can't be handled." "Well, you take care of yourself." A good marriage is worth fighting for. If only she knew. When I returned home that afternoon, Sarah was packing up her equipment. The expression on her face told me everything I needed to know before she said a word. "I've got everything," she said grimly. "Grant, this is much worse than you thought." "How much worse?" "The system has been recording continuously for 19 months, not 18. There are over 2 terabytes of video files, organized by date, time, and location. But more importantly, I found the streaming platform's user interface and financial records." She handed me a printed screenshot. It showed a website called Real Life Cams, with our house listed as the suburban couple, premium authentic content. There were subscriber counts, payment records, and a comment section where users discussed our daily routines with disturbing familiarity. They know when you shower, when you eat breakfast, when you go to bed. They know your work schedule, your favorite TV shows, even when you're sick. Sarah's voice was flat and professional, but I could see the anger in her eyes. "Someone has been selling your entire life, and the customers believe they're getting exclusive access to real people who don't know they're being watched." The financial records? Over $400,000 in revenue in the past 19 months. All payments routed through a shell company called Midwest Marketing Solutions, which is registered in Delaware with your wife listed as the sole proprietor. "That's Denise's consulting business." "No, Grant. Midwest Marketing Solutions exists only on paper. It was created specifically to launder money from this streaming operation. Your wife didn't just cooperate with this. She's the CEO of an illegal surveillance company." I sat down heavily on my couch. The same couch where Denise and I had watched movies together while strangers paid to watch us. What about Ryan Hutchinson? He's listed as a technical consultant for Midwest Marketing Solutions. According to the financial records, he's received over $150,000 in advisory fees over the past year and a half. So he's been paid to help her? More than that. I found personal communications between them on the server. They're not just business partners, Grant. They're planning a future together. With your money. Sarah showed me printed copies of text messages she'd recovered from the server. The messages between Denise and Ryan were intimate, detailed, and dated back nearly 2 years, starting almost immediately after they'd begun working together on my retirement planning. Can't wait to get away from him permanently. Just need to milk this setup for another year. The business is generating enough now that we won't need to worry about money when we're together. He's so clueless, still thinks I'm building a legitimate consulting practice. The subscribers love how authentic everything feels when he doesn't know he's being watched. The messages revealed their entire plan. They'd been using the surveillance money to fund their affair, taking trips together while telling their spouses they were at business conferences. They'd even purchased investment property together in Ryan's name, planning to move in together once Denise divorced me and took half of my assets in the settlement. But the worst part was how they talked about the people watching us. The subscribers are eating up the morning routine content. They're paying premium rates because they think it's completely real. As long as he doesn't find out, we can keep this going for years. The bedroom camera angle is perfect. Subscribers love the authenticity. They'd turned our marriage into entertainment, our privacy into profit, and our home into a studio for producing content they marketed as authentic suburban intimacy. There's more, Sarah said quietly. I found evidence that they've been planning to expand. They were looking into installing similar systems in other homes. Other victims? Ryan has access to financial information for dozens of clients. They were planning to use his position to identify potential targets, wealthy couples, attractive families, people who could generate subscriber interest and wouldn't notice minor increases in their utility bills. The scope of their plans made me feel physically sick. This wasn't just about betraying me. They were planning to violate the privacy of Ryan's other clients, turning his financial advisory business into a recruitment pipeline for surveillance victims. How were they planning to expand? According to their messages, Ryan would identify financially stable couples through his client base, then recommend electrical upgrades or home security improvements that would actually be surveillance installations. They'd already identified 6 potential targets and were planning to begin installations within the next 3 months. 6 families? 6 families who trusted Ryan with their financial planning and would trust his recommendations about home improvements. The messages suggest they were specifically targeting couples with higher incomes who could generate premium subscription rates. I thought about Ryan's other clients, people I knew from around town who trusted him with their retirement savings and investment planning. They had no idea their financial advisor was planning to turn their homes into broadcasting studios. "What's our next step?" I asked. "We contact the FBI. This crosses state lines, involves wire fraud, and constitutes a continuing criminal enterprise. The federal authorities will want to move quickly, especially with evidence of plans to expand to additional victims." How quickly? Days, not weeks. The evidence is overwhelming, and the fact that they're planning to victimize more families makes this a priority case. That evening, I sat across from Denise at dinner, watching her lie to my face while knowing exactly how much money she'd made from those lies. Every gesture felt calculated, every word carefully chosen to maintain the performance. "Ryan thinks we should incorporate the business," she said, cutting into her chicken with the expensive knife set she'd bought last month. "It would provide better tax advantages as we scale up operations." Scale up how? More clients, bigger projects. He has connections throughout the region who could use our specialized marketing services. She smiled at me with what I used to think was genuine affection. The demand for authentic content is really exploding right now. I nodded as if I believed her, but inside I was calculating. If Ryan was recruiting his financial clients as surveillance targets, dozens of families could be at risk. The FBI needed to know about this immediately. That sounds promising, I managed to say. I know you've been skeptical about the consulting business, Grant, but it's really starting to pay off. Ryan says we could be looking at 7 figures within 2 years if we execute the expansion plan correctly. 7 figures. From violating the privacy of families who trusted Ryan with their financial planning. What kind of expansion plan? Well, we've been focusing on local markets, but Ryan thinks we could branch out regionally. He knows potential clients in Chicago, Milwaukee, even some contacts in Minneapolis who are looking for the kind of authentic marketing content we specialize in. Every word was a lie wrapped in just enough truth to sound plausible. She was describing a business plan for systematically violating the privacy of families across the Midwest. I'm glad it's working out for you. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It's working out for us, honey. This could change our whole future. Within 5 years, we could retire early, travel the world, do whatever we want. The touch of her hand made my skin crawl. She was sitting there in our kitchen, under cameras she'd installed, planning our future with money she'd earned by destroying our privacy while conducting an affair with the man who'd helped her do it. I hope you're right, I said. I know I'm right. Ryan's been in business development for 15 years, and he says he's never seen an opportunity like this. The market for authentic content is completely undersaturated. After dinner, while Denise was upstairs taking her evening shower, a routine I now knew was being broadcast to paying subscribers, I called Mike Ware with an update. Sarah found everything, I told him. It's worse than we thought. They're planning to expand to other victims. How many other victims? At least 6 families that they've already identified. Ryan's using his position as a financial advisor to target his own clients. Mike was quiet for a moment. Grant, this isn't just about your marriage anymore. This is a federal crime spree in progress. We need to contact the FBI tonight. Tonight? If they're planning to install surveillance systems in other homes, every day we wait puts more families at risk. The federal authorities need to move before Ryan and Denise start expanding operations. An hour later, I was sitting in the federal building downtown, across from FBI Special Agent Lisa Reeves. Sarah had provided her with a complete forensic analysis of our evidence, and Agent Reeves had reviewed everything before our meeting. Agent Reeves was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 30s, with short blonde hair and the kind of intense focus that made me understand why criminals feared federal investigators. Mr. Novak, I've reviewed the evidence your forensics expert provided. This is one of the most elaborate privacy violation schemes I've encountered. What happens next? We open a federal investigation immediately. The interstate streaming of illegally recorded intimate content is a serious federal crime. Add in the wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy elements, and we're looking at potential sentences of decades in prison. For both Denise and Ryan? For everyone involved. We'll also be investigating the subscribers who knowingly paid for illegally obtained content. She leaned forward. Mr. Novak, I need you to understand something. When we move on this, it's going to be fast and comprehensive. Your wife and her partner won't have time to destroy evidence or flee. When? Soon. But first, we need you to continue acting normally. Can you do that? I think so. It's crucial. If they suspect anything, they could delete everything remotely and disappear with the money they've already stolen. Worse, they could accelerate their timeline for targeting other victims. How long do I have to keep pretending? Our cybercrime unit is working around the clock to trace all the financial networks and identify potential victims. We should be ready to move within a week, 10 days at most. The waiting was torture. Every conversation with Denise felt like a performance. Every time she mentioned Ryan or her business, I had to fight the urge to confront her with what I knew. Every night I lay awake knowing that strangers were potentially watching us sleep, that our most intimate moments were being sold for entertainment. But I managed to maintain the facade for another week. During that time, Agent Reeves's team worked around the clock. They traced the financial networks, identified the subscribers, and built a comprehensive case that would ensure Denise and Ryan couldn't escape prosecution. They also began investigating Ryan's client list to identify the families he and Denise were planning to target. We stopped them just in time, Agent Reeves told me during our final meeting before the arrests. The other surveillance operations were in the early stages, but they would have been fully operational within weeks. What about the families? Do they know? We'll be contacting them as part of the investigation. They have a right to know their privacy was targeted, and some may choose to pursue civil action. How many subscribers are we talking about? Over 3,000 active subscribers, plus additional purchasers of archived content. Many are in other states, which makes this a multi-jurisdictional federal case. Will they all be prosecuted? The ones who can be identified and who clearly knew the content was illegally obtained, yes. Knowingly purchasing illegally recorded intimate content is a federal crime, regardless of where the subscriber lives. 3 days later, on a Thursday morning in early April, exactly 3 weeks after I'd first found the cameras in my attic, Agent Reeves called me at work. "It's time, Mr. Novak. We're executing the warrants this afternoon. I need you to be at your house at 3 o'clock. My hands shook as I drove home. After weeks of knowing the truth and pretending ignorance, the moment of reckoning had finally arrived. I pulled into my driveway at 2:55 p.m. At exactly 3 o'clock, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb, and federal agents emerged with tactical gear and search warrants. Agent Reeves approached my front door as I answered it. "Grant Novak? We have warrants to search these premises and seize electronic equipment related to an ongoing federal investigation." "Come in," I said, stepping aside. As the agents began their work, systematically dismantling the surveillance system with the efficiency of people who'd done this many times before, another car pulled into the driveway. Denise's Honda Civic. She was home early from her marketing job. I watched through the window as she got out of her car and saw the federal agents entering our house. The expression on her face went from confusion to horror to something that looked like calculation, like she was trying to figure out how much we knew and whether she could still salvage the situation. She walked slowly toward the front door, where Agent Reeves was waiting. "Ma'am, are you Denise Patricia Novak?" "Yes, what's going on? Why are federal agents in my house?" "Mrs. Novak, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, interstate transmission of illegally recorded material, tax evasion, and violation of federal privacy laws." Agent Reeves began reading Denise her rights as other agents led her to one of the SUVs. She kept looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read: surprise, anger, and something that might have been grudging respect. "You knew," she said, as they put her in the back seat. "How long have you known?" I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. "Grant, this doesn't have to destroy both of us. I can explain everything. The business was legitimate. We were just using innovative marketing techniques." Even now, even while being arrested by federal agents, she was still trying to lie to me. As the agents worked, they dismantled the entire surveillance system with methodical precision. Every camera, every cable, every piece of equipment was cataloged and removed as evidence. They also seized our computers, phones, and financial records related to Denise's consulting business. Agent Reeves found me in the kitchen while her team finished up. Ryan Hutchinson was arrested at his office an hour ago. His computer and client files have been seized, and his financial licenses have been suspended pending investigation. What happens now? They'll both be arraigned tomorrow morning. Based on the evidence, the prosecutor expects guilty pleas, but that's their decision. What matters is that the operation is shut down and no more victims will be created. What about the other families they were planning to target? We've contacted all 6 families that were identified in their communications. None of them had surveillance equipment installed yet, but they're understandably shaken by the revelation that their financial advisor was planning to violate their privacy. Are they pursuing legal action? Several are considering civil suits against Ryan for violation of professional ethics and breach of fiduciary duty. His professional liability insurance may not cover criminal activities, so they'll probably have to pursue his personal assets. Over the following weeks, the full scope of the conspiracy became clear through court filings and media reports. Denise and Ryan had been lovers for over 2 years, meeting initially when I'd asked him to help us with retirement planning. They'd used his access to client financial information to develop their surveillance scheme, targeting couples they believed would generate subscriber interest based on age, attractiveness, and apparent financial stability. The money they'd earned, over $400,000, had funded a lavish lifestyle neither could afford on their legitimate incomes. Expensive trips to Paris and Mexico that they'd told their spouses were business conferences. A luxury condo in Ryan's name that they'd planned to move into together after Denise divorced me. High-end cars, jewelry, and clothing that Denise had claimed were gifts from grateful consulting clients. Ryan's wife, Jennifer, filed for divorce within days of his arrest, taking their legitimate assets and leaving him with nothing but legal bills. His financial advisory firm fired him immediately, and the State Securities Commission began proceedings to permanently revoke his licenses. The subscribers were a mix of local men and strangers from across the country who'd been willing to pay premium rates for what they believed was authentic content, featuring real people who didn't know they were being watched. Many face prosecution in their home states for knowingly receiving illegally obtained intimate recordings. But perhaps most disturbing was the discovery of their expansion plans. Ryan's client list included dozens of families they'd identified as potential targets, complete with financial profiles and personal information that would have made surveillance installation easier. They'd even begun developing a standardized installation process that could be replicated by other technicians they planned to recruit. It was basically a franchise model for privacy violations, Agent Reeves explained during one of our follow-up meetings. They were planning to scale this operation across multiple states, using financial advisors and contractors to identify and access victims. The legal process moved quickly once the arrests were made. The evidence was overwhelming, and both defendants' attorneys advised them to cooperate in hopes of reducing their sentences. Denise ultimately pleaded guilty to federal charges carrying a potential 20-year sentence. In exchange for her cooperation in prosecuting other aspects of the case, including identifying potential expansion targets and providing details about the technical operation, she received 7 years in federal prison, 5 years of supervised release, and an order to pay full restitution of the money earned from the scheme. Ryan received a similar sentence, plus permanent banishment from the financial services industry and a separate order to pay damages to the clients whose privacy he'd planned to violate. During the sentencing hearing, I had the opportunity to read a victim impact statement. I'd spent weeks writing it, trying to capture what it felt like to discover that your most intimate moments had been sold to strangers for entertainment. Your Honor, I said, standing at the podium in the federal courthouse, the defendants didn't just violate my privacy. They turned my home into a business, my marriage into a performance, and my trust into a commodity. I looked directly at Denise as I spoke. She sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller and older than the woman I'd been married to. Ryan sat beside her, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the courtroom. For nearly 2 years, strangers watched me sleep, shower, and eat breakfast. They watched me when I was sick, when I was happy, when I thought I was alone in my own home. The defendants sold tickets to my life without my knowledge or consent, and they marketed that violation as entertainment. The judge listened carefully as I described the ongoing impact of their crimes, the therapy sessions to deal with the violation of trust, the inability to feel safe in my own home, the knowledge that intimate recordings of me might still exist on subscribers' computers somewhere. But perhaps most importantly, I continued, this case shows how technology can be weaponized by people we trust. The defendants use their positions as a spouse and as a financial advisor to violate not just my privacy, but to plan violations against other innocent families who had done nothing wrong except trust the wrong people. After the sentencing, Agent Reeves walked with me to the courthouse parking garage. You did the right thing, Grant. This operation would have continued indefinitely if you hadn't discovered it, and they would have victimized dozens of other families. I keep wondering how many other operations like this are running right now. More than we'd like to think. But cases like this one send a message. Privacy violations have serious consequences, and federal investigators have the tools to track down perpetrators no matter how sophisticated their operations. What about the subscribers? How many were actually prosecuted? We identified and prosecuted over 200 subscribers in 17 states. Most received federal charges for knowingly purchasing illegally obtained intimate content. The sentences ranged from probation to 3 years in prison, depending on their level of involvement and whether they had prior offenses. Were any of them local? Several, including 2 men you probably know, City Council member Tom Bradley and high school principal Robert Morrison. Their cases attracted significant local media attention. The revelation that respected community members had been paying to watch my private life added another layer of violation to the whole experience. That was 5 years ago. Today, I run a successful home inspection business that specializes in privacy and security assessments. The experience taught me to look for things most inspectors would never notice: hidden cameras, unauthorized network connections, unusual electrical modifications, and other signs of surveillance equipment. I've developed a checklist that I use for every inspection, looking for the kinds of modifications that would indicate surveillance installations. I've found 3 other homes with similar setups over the past 5 years, helping other families discover violations before they escalated to the level I experienced. I've also testified as an expert witness in several federal cases involving residential surveillance crimes, helping prosecutors explain the technical aspects of these operations to juries. I remarried 2 years ago to Sarah Martinez, the digital forensics expert who helped expose Denise's crimes. We have a good life together, built on complete honesty and mutual respect for each other's privacy and autonomy. Our home is equipped with the most advanced privacy protection systems available. We know exactly what's connected to our network, what's recording in our space, and who has access to our personal information. But more importantly, we have something Denise and I never had: complete transparency about our finances, our relationships, and our individual goals. Denise was released from federal prison last month after serving her full 7-year sentence. According to the terms of her supervised release, she's required to inform neighbors and employers that she's a registered sex offender, making it nearly impossible for her to find steady employment or stable housing. She's currently living in a halfway house in Minneapolis, working minimum wage jobs under her real name, which is now permanently associated with her crimes thanks to extensive media coverage during the trial. Ryan was released 6 months earlier and moved to Phoenix, where he works at a call center under constant supervision by federal probation officers. His marriage ended during his imprisonment, his career is over, and he'll never again have access to other people's financial information. They never reunited after their releases. According to court records, they're prohibited from contacting each other as part of their supervised release terms. This morning, I was preparing for a privacy rights conference where I speak regularly about surveillance crimes when I saw a news article that caught my attention. Former federal prisoner arrested for parole violation. The article included a photo I recognized immediately. Denise had been arrested in Minneapolis for attempting to create a new streaming account using false identification, violating the terms of her supervised release. According to the article, she'd been working with another person to install hidden cameras in a different apartment building, apparently trying to restart her surveillance operation on a smaller scale. She was facing a return to federal prison for the remainder of her original sentence, plus additional charges for the new violations. I closed the article and finished preparing my presentation. I had important work to do, helping other people protect their privacy and recognize the signs of surveillance crimes. The conference room was filled with law enforcement officers, attorneys, privacy advocates, and security professionals who understood that technology's power to connect us can also be used to exploit us. Privacy isn't just about what we hide, I told the audience. It's about our right to control our own lives, our own spaces, and our own stories. When that control is taken away without our consent, it's not just a violation of law, it's a violation of human dignity. After my presentation, a young FBI agent approached me with questions about identifying surveillance equipment in residential properties. "The technology keeps getting smaller and harder to detect," she said. "How do we stay ahead of people who use it for criminal purposes?" "The same way we've always fought crime," I replied. "We pay attention to details that don't belong, we trust our instincts when something feels wrong, and we remember that the most sophisticated equipment in the world still requires human installation and maintenance." Any specific advice for homeowners? Learn your house. Know what belongs and what doesn't. If you find equipment you didn't install, or if your utility bills increase unexpectedly, or if someone offers to do electrical work at unusually low rates, ask questions. And if you find surveillance equipment, don't confront anyone. Call law enforcement immediately. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the irony of my situation. A home inspector who'd spent his career finding other people's hidden problems had been living with the biggest hidden problem of all, right under his own roof. But I'd found it eventually, and in finding it, I'd not only protected myself, but potentially dozens of other families who would have become victims if Denise and Ryan's operation had continued to expand. The house I live in now with Sarah is a testament to what privacy protection can look like when it's done right. We have security systems that we control, networking equipment that we monitor, and complete transparency about every device connected to our home systems. But more importantly, we have complete honesty about who we are, what we want from life, and how we treat each other's privacy and trust. Some people might say I was lucky to discover the surveillance system when I did, but I don't think it was luck. I think it was the result of 20 years of training myself to look for problems other people miss, to notice when something doesn't belong, and to investigate until I understand what I'm seeing. Those skills didn't just save my privacy. They saved my life and the privacy of families I'll never meet. Because in the end, Denise and Ryan weren't just stealing money or violating my trust. They were stealing my right to exist as a private individual in my own home, and they were planning to steal that same right from dozens of other innocent families. Today, I help other victims navigate the process of reporting privacy crimes and rebuilding their lives afterward. It's necessary work because the technology that enables these crimes is becoming more sophisticated and accessible every year. But it's also hopeful work because every successful prosecution makes the next criminal think twice about whether the money is worth the risk of spending decades in federal prison. Every family we protect, every privacy violation we prevent, every perpetrator we catch. It's all evidence that justice is possible, even in a world where our most intimate moments can be turned into someone else's profit. The home inspection that started this whole story was supposed to be routine, just a simple thermal scan to satisfy an insurance company's requirements. Instead, it became the moment when I learned that my own home had been turned into a crime scene, my marriage had been turned into a business transaction, and my trust had been turned into a commodity. But it also became the moment when I started fighting back. And in the end, that fight protected not just me, but families across the region who would have become victims if these criminals had been allowed to continue their operations. The thermal imaging camera that revealed those first suspicious heat signatures now sits in my office as a reminder that sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we're just trying to do routine maintenance on our own lives. And sometimes, finding problems in our own homes can prevent much bigger problems from spreading to others.